Something about your love changes everything. Changes everything. Something about your love. Something about your love changes everything. You turn my morning into dancing. 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 'Cause your love changes everything. Your love changes everything. You dancing. You turn my morning into dancing. You turn my morning into dancing. 'Cause your love changes everything. Your love changes everything. Oh, there's something about your love. Something about your love changes everything in my body. Oh, something about your love. Something about your love changes everything. It changes everything. Something about your love. Something about your love changes everything. It changes everything. Something about your love. Something about your love changes everything. Changes everything. Something about your love. Something about your love changes everything. Something about your love. Something about your love changes everything. Changes everything. Something about your love. Something about your love changes everything. Changes everything. Something about your love. Something about your love changes everything. You turn my morning into dancing. 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 Something about your love. Something about your love changes everything.
Good morning, Rooted Men. Great to be with you this morning. Super excited to be here. It's a chilly morning. I was just outside with the dog and I'm freezing my tootsies off. I hope everyone's having a great day. I see we have 15 people online. Let's get through that real quick, really. Chris Conley came on at 7:49. So somebody was up and ready early this morning. And then we have Chuck B's with us, Ken Gooch, and we have Bert Reggiani. Men's group was great last night. And Ken goes, we missed you last night, Steve. Yeah, last night I was doing balloons at the Lakeville station in Lakeville. Last year, Lakeville called me, Lakeville Elementary Leonard Elementary contacted me and asked me if I was interested in doing balloons for their spring carnival. And because they were in a bind. They had hired a guy to do balloons, and he up and died right before the carnival. So she called me, and I says, yeah, I'd be glad to come out and do it. And they donated some money to Love for a Child. And well, this year she called me back, says if you could come do it, I should love him back. And they wanted me to do, they have a PTO fundraiser at Lakeville Station. And lo and behold, they asked me to come out there, which was never worked a restaurant before. It's kind of, I'm used to being outdoors where all the popping doesn't bother anybody. So it was a unique experience for me. I got a chance to do this stuff and raise some money for charity, which is also good. But I heard that you guys had a good meeting last night from Bert Reggiani. I'd love to know more about it. Maybe somebody can bring me up to date tomorrow morning. I'd be thrilled. But I see that's who we have online. Let's see, we have 5 on X, 7 on YouTube, and 2 on Facebook. So let's get to it. Ready? Because it's kind of a lot this morning. I first read through it. I go, oh man, did I get set up. This is a great set of verses here. So let's start. Let's go right into them. Ready? And I think you'll understand in about 3 seconds in why this is something that most pastors will avoid like the plague. So we're at we're in Colossians 3. I'm sorry, I always want to call it Corinthians. Colossians 3, verse 18. It says, wives, submit to your husbands as is fitting for the Lord. Husbands, love your wives and do not be harsh with them. Oh, wait a second. Let me back up real quick. Ready? Can I back up? Do you mind? Because I think what I did is I left it little. I didn't put it up on the screen, did I? Sorry, guys. I'm an amateur at this. Remember that. I think that might be better. All right, so we'll start back over again because I didn't read very much. Wives, submit to yourselves to your husbands as is fitting for the Lord. Husbands, love your wives and not be harsh with them. Children, obey your parents in everything, for this pleases the Lord. Fathers, do not embitter your children, or they will become discouraged. I want to pause right there for a second. Because there's more, but this part here, I just thought we should slow it down a little bit. This verse here has been used by men. It's been used by women. It's been hated by women. But I think what it does is set an order and not necessarily use the best phrase. Submit, the Greek word they use in this has 2 different meanings. One is for the military things, range forces and stuff like that. And in the other it's a voluntary attitude of cooperation or assuming responsibility and obedience. So what Paul is asking women to do there is, I like to put it in more palatable terms for today's world, and that is more of a cooperational type helper. That make no mistake about it. The fact that the second verse, the husbands, love your wives and do not be harsh with them, is there for a reason. I mean, it's not, even Paul understood that those words could be misinterpreted, I believe, and believe that, but your wife is not a bondservant. In this case, he'll talk about bondservants and slaves. He separates them because they're partners. They're one flesh. There's so many scripture verses that point out just the opposite of the bondservant or the slave. Paul is putting a systematic order in place to help people understand how a life should live. In this verse, Paul in the verse with the men, he uses the word agape, which is sacrificial love. So in other words, he could have also said, husbands, sacrifice everything for your wife. Give everything. But he put it in a very succinct and personal. Paul's consistent with, because he uses similar words in Ephesians 5:22-25. He goes on with the list and order of operations that most of us see that's okay. Then he goes into the children, obey your parents and everything, and for it pleases the Lord, right? The funny thing is that he has none of us have an issue with that one. The men don't mind, the women don't mind. It's a beautiful thing, because we understand that the reason we need our children to be obedient is because there's certain things that in culture and in interaction that are necessary and needed for people to get along. You can't have kids running around crazy, because there's going to be tension and anger. The origin goes back to the 10 Commandments. I mean, if you want to look at where this rule came, I mean, it basically the 10 Commandments say, honor your mother and father. And then Paul comes on the next verse in 21. He says, fathers, do not embitter your children, or they will become discouraged. I look at this one from a man's point of view, obviously, and as a father, and fatherhood isn't easy. I mean, we give so much credit to motherhood in this society and this culture, but the fatherhood is different. We don't have the nurturing aspect, and well, maybe more now than we did when I grew up. But we have to make sure that we provide. To anybody that holds a job nowadays knows that that's not low pressure. I mean, that can be a real challenge. The demands of a career, the demands of a job, where they pull you in different directions. They expect so many hours a week. They push and they shove, and they want the best for all of us, or not. They want the best for them, and you're the one that's in the middle. We're needed to be there in person. We need to be there, not only to provide, but also support. I mean, we need to stand up for them when we feel that they're not being treated correctly in school, or not getting what they need. We need to be there. We're their advocate. We stand up for them. We need to protect them. If you have daughters, you know what I'm talking about. And we can't forget to love them. With all we got going on, the support and the protection and the career and just being there, we can't forget to love. I mean, I didn't have a dad after 7th grade, so I miss that aspect, and I think sometimes I may have overcompensated. You never know, but in this case, Paul is warning about being over zealous, over demanding. You can suck the life out of something if you push it hard enough. So now we're going to go to verse 22, because there's a lot here. Slaves, obey your earthly masters in everything, and do it not only when their eye is on you and to curry their favor. I did it again, didn't I? Sorry, guys. Oh my goodness. Slaves, obey your earthly masters in everything you do, and do it not only when their eye is on you and to curry their favor, but with sincerity of heart and reverence for the Lord. Whatever you do, work at it with all your heart, as working for the Lord, not for human masters, since you know that you will receive an inheritance from the Lord as a reward. It is the Lord Christ you are serving. Anyone who does wrong will be paid for their wrongs, and there is no favoritism. All right. Kind of doesn't apply to us today, does it? We don't have, slaves, or some of the definitions are bond servants, which in that era, that was a choice. It wasn't necessarily you became a bond servant because it took you out of poverty and took you into a comfortable life, waiting, working in the king's castle or whatever. But that really doesn't apply to any of us. So how can we take those verses and apply it in 2024? And I thought of a simple thought when I was sitting here last night looking at it. In verse 22, it says, "Slaves, obey your earthly masters." And because today there's no such thing. We know that, or there shouldn't be, not legally. So I took 22 and I changed word slaves to worker or employee. So here's how it came. Verse 22. Workers, obey your earthly employers in everything, and do it not only when their eye is on you and to curry their favor, but with sincerity of heart and reverence for the Lord. Whatever you do, work at it with all your heart, as working for the Lord, not for human masters, since that you know you will receive an inheritance from the Lord as a reward. It is the Lord Christ you are serving. And anyone who deserves wrong will be paid for their wrongs, and there's no favoritism. Let's face it, some jobs are kind of like being a bondservant. Some jobs are difficult, they're painful, they're not rewarding. This I thought was a good example of how we could spend our time at work. There's nothing. Some jobs are just a chore. They feel like slavery because you're committed to be there 5-6 days a week, long hours, no breaks or whatever, depending on the company, obviously. Paul's giving us good advice that we could use in our everyday life. Paul's using something that we don't think applies to us, but look through the right lens, maybe it's very helpful. It helps us understand our place and let us know that what we're doing is on the right track. And that's what I got for you today. I hope it wasn't too long. I hope I was good. I'm right on time. I hope I don't see anybody else came back on. So I think I can safely say it's been a pleasure. I know there's something I'm supposed to say here. And all of a sudden it just drew blank. Oh, I'm sorry. Blessings on your day. And may someone see Jesus in you.